All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the WinUI Community Call, August edition. I'm Anna. I'm a PM on the WinUI team, and I've been running these community calls for a while now. And today we've got a great one. So let's get into it. Through a PowerPoint here. So, about the community call, these take place on the third Wednesday of every month, usually at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is 1600 UTC. The next call is likely going to be on September 15th, which is the third Wednesday of September. In the meantime, you can always keep up with our team on GitHub and on Twitter using the handles and names on this slide right here. So, as for today's agenda, we are going to do the intro as always. We have some team updates. I'm going to be going over some of our recent releases, and Miguel is going to be showing off some demos of cool experimental features we just released. And then we have some special guests from the input and composition team. We're going to get to know them a little bit, and then we will have some time for Q&A. So let's start out with what is WinUI. So WinUI is the native UI platform for Windows 10 and Windows 11. So it's built for today's modern hardware and devices, and it offers the latest fluent styling. You can use WinUI to build rich .NET or C++ apps for modern Windows devices. WinUI also powers the Windows and Xbox OS shells, as well as many apps and platforms like .NET MAUI and React Native for Windows. So there are two generations of WinUI. We have WinUI 2 and WinUI 3. WinUI 2 is the second generation of this native UX stack in Windows, and it's built for UWP apps. WinUI 2 consists of the Scene Graph layer and XAML framework in the OS, as well as a library of fluent-based controls and styles that usually get updated around trimestrally. WinUI 3 is a new third generation of the native UX stack. It consolidates all of those UX technologies previously built into Windows into a single decoupled framework, and it ships as a part of the Windows App SDK, which was previously known as Project Reunion. So, first off, we can start with some team updates. So, I'm sad to say this is actually my last community call. I'm moving on to explore some new opportunities in my career, but I'm really excited to pass the torch on to Gabby. She's a PM on the WinUI team who's going to be taking on the community calls from here on out. She's awesome. You guys are going to love her. She's going to do a great job. So in just a few seconds, Gabby will turn her video on and say a few words to introduce herself. But if I can just say a few words, Gabby is a PM on the WinUI team. She's been focusing on WinUI 2, lots of new controls like InfoBar, Pips Pager, and more. So Gabby, if you want to go ahead and turn on your video and say a few words, you can meet everybody. Let's go.
Super.
Here. Okay, you're on.
Awesome. Thanks, Anna, for the introduction. Yeah, hi, everybody. As Anna said, I'm a PM on the WinUI team. I've been working on InfoBar, Pips Pager, and a bit of integrating Mica into NavView for WinUI 2.6. I'm super excited to take on the community call. I've seen a few faces on GitHub, but really excited to engage with you guys further, share all of the cool things that our team is up to, and really get to know you a bit more. A little bit about me. I've been on the WinUI team for about a year and a half. And previous to that, I was a software engineer on Windows Update, where I was working on the packaging pipeline in .NET, and I interned at Microsoft for a few summers before that. As a fun fact, I also like to dance, and so I work on fun wearable tech and e-tech styles. If you want to follow me, know more about the community call, feel free to do that on Twitter at Gabby Bilka. Since there's a bit of a passing of the guard, I really encourage you all to comment on the GitHub issues or DM me personally if you have any feedback about the community calls. I'd love to make this as informative and helpful for you as possible. So thank you for the introduction. And I'm really excited to get to know you all and share all the cool things our team's doing.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. And yeah, so as I said, I'm really excited for Gabby to take this over. She's going to do a great job. But of course, I also want to say thank you to all of you, our awesome community who have made these community calls super fun. I've had a great time hosting them and kind of like getting to know and talking to a lot of you. And I'm so excited to see what WinUI continues to do in the future. I'm sure it's going to be nothing but awesomeness. Okay, so let's move on. Oh, and there's Gabby's Twitter down there if you want to give her a follow. let's see what we have next. Okay. So we recently shipped Windows App SDK 1.0 Experimental. This was a pretty exciting release because it had some cool cutting edge new features that you can get your hands on. So for WinUI 3 specifically, there were a few new things. We added support for Visual Studio 2022, which is really exciting. We also added support for showing a content dialog in a per window rather than per thread. So that's a new feature you can try out. We also have a couple of bug fixes, pretty important ones that you might want to take into your app. And there are also many more exciting cutting edge features across the whole Windows App SDK. So I would definitely take a look at our release notes to really just get a breakdown of what's new in WinUI 3, as well as what's new across the Windows App SDK, because there's just a lot of cool stuff to check out. So as a reminder, I just wanted to put this slide here to talk about our 3 release channels for the Windows App SDK. So starting with the 1.0 experimental release, which we just put out, there are now 3 separate release channels. These are going to have different feature sets and different shipping cadences. So we have the stable, the preview, and the experimental channel. Experimental features are in early stages of development. They may be removed from the next release or never released, and we are targeting monthly for these experimental releases, but we are still getting those shipping muscles strengthened. So yeah, we'll see. And then we have a preview, which is basically just a preview of the next stable release. There may still be breaking API changes between preview and stable, but preview should be a decently stable release, not production ready, but something that's more stable than experimental. Stable, on the other hand, is completely supported production ready APIs and features. You can use them in your production apps. And this we're looking at every 4 months or so with some servicing releases in there for the stable release channel. So now we are going to talk a little bit about WinUI 2.7. And I believe Gabby is going to go ahead and tell us all about this.
Yep, that's right. Hi again. Yep, so WinUI 2.7, we're aiming to release this in late Q3, early to mid Q4. And some of the features that this will include is horizontal orientation for color picker. I'd like to give a big shout out to Chinyu Coding, Marcel, for helping us spec and develop this feature. We're also working on the info badge control in both the navigation view and standalone, as well as some extra bug fixes and stabilization from 2.6. You may have seen some of the 2.6.1 and 2.6.2 coming out. We're also working on adding in WebView 2 in preview for WinUI 2 in PC only. So we're really excited for these to be upcoming in WinUI 2.7. And we're looking towards shipping a preview of WinUI 2.7 in the near future. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. Okay, I heard there was some low volume. I apologize for that. Not really sure what's going on my end, but I will try to talk a little bit louder. Hopefully I don't blow the ears off of the people on this team's call. Well, good news. We're going to Miguel next. So I think Miguel is going to go ahead and share his screen and show us some of the new experimental features in the latest release. So Miguel, why don't you share your screen and let us know when you're ready.
Sure, I'm ready right now. And also, yeah, I believe that you can see my screen. So yep. This is an ebook reader. I made this demo several months ago on a boring weekend at home because I love books. Actually, you can see me right now, but I have a teacher of A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, FYI. So as you can see, I love books. I have to update this demo to use V1 experimental bits. It was as simple as going to the project. I prefer just to change the version number manually, so I update this number over there. I went into the package as well, double click, go down, and also I update all these number manually, press F5, and everything was running. So let me just click to demonstrate that this is running in 1.0 experimental. One of the most remarkable features that I really love about running this app in Visual Studio 2022, because and I say we right now the Windows App SDK is working in Visual Studio 2022 in addition to 2019, is that we have support for this cool thing called .NET Hot Reload. For instance, this is my WinUI 3 apps. I want to change something. Let me just pick up something I want to change in the code behind. Let me go first to the settings. I'm going to select a folder. I'm going to load a collection of open source books, domain public books. So for instance, we have here a tale of two cities. I'm going to change this text over there because I'm just creating this text in the code behind. One of the cool thing is I can go into my page, SAML, go into the source code. This is the source code. Changing the tester. I'm going just to clean the code, to clean this text box, semicolon. I'm going to click this button. This button means that, hey, apply all the changes in my code. I'm going to show up again this app. You see that I still have this text, but because I really changed this, it's no longer going to appear that. So cool. So it means that you can start to write code in C# while the app is running, and you can see immediately all the changes. In addition, for instance, to the SAML hot reload, which is still working. Okay, let me demonstrate as well that this is still working. For instance, I'm going to change, I don't know, maybe this text in here, and going to the book reader page, which will be somewhere. Let me, in the views, call the Solution Explorer, looking for my file. This is the file. There is some text blocking here. I'm going just to, for instance, change the font size. Maybe say something like 36, go back the app, and you see how dynamically everything is changing. The little difference is in SAML hot reload, you don't require to apply any code changes. You don't require to click this button, but both cases, they are wonderful and going to help you do your inner loop. Cool, more stuff I want to show you. So C# WinRT also brings some cool updates, like adding some interrupt APIs to avoid use con imports. That means that, for instance, in Windows App SDK 0.8, you require to do some kind of, let me show you, con import if you want to get this interface, window native. So that means that with this interface, you can get the edge wing of the window using the window handle. So it means right now with C# WinRT, all the things are changing. It means that you no longer require this. So for instance, I can comment in that because it's no longer a requirement. I can go into my code in here. I need to change this a little. I'm going to say something like edge wing equal. And now in the WinRT namespace, in another namespace called interrupt, there is a window native class, which also have the window handle. So that means that, hey, we are no longer require this thing. Oh yeah, I need to pass the window class. Cool. More stuff I want to show you. One of the experimental, there's 1.0 experimental also comes with several new windowing APIs. There are right now two ways to customize your window. One is at the SAML level, and another one is in the windowing level. The windowing API level should be agnostic to SAML WinUI 3. For instance, if you want to change the title bar of this app, let me show you the title bar again. So compiling, hope I didn't break anything. Come on, you can do it. Deploy. There we are. Yeah, I didn't break anything. So we want to change this title bar. So we can do two things. One thing is changing at the level of SAML, changing at the level of the windowing API. So let me go into this SAML level first. I'm going to navigate into my main Windows SAML. I have this stack panel on the top. I'm going to uncomment. I'm going to the code behind, and in the code behind, I'm going to use this extend content to the title bar is sec title bar. The extend content in the title bar, you can see, is something that belongs to the window. And this is a window, and this is a SAML window, right? And the sec title bar is another method that allows just to specify which UI element are going to allow to drag the window around. So this is a two thing. I'm going to compile and run again. Let's see. Deploying. Yep, we have this colorful custom title bar right now in here. Cool. More stuff that we can do it. So this is at the level of the SAML title bar, but we can also don't use these APIs, and we can use the new windowing API, which is right now this is a helper class that I create to simplify a little how to call that. The new windowing API are using HWin. For using, and you need to pass the HWin to this new windowing API. So it means that I have this helper get a app window from HWin, which is also getting something called WinUI. WinUI is an agnostic identifier of any kind of window. And once I get in this WinUI, I can get the app window. When I get the app window, I mean, I have access to a lot of new functionality. For instance, there is a class called title bar, and inside this title bar, I have something called extend content into the title bar, which is similar to the one that we have on SAML, but this is at the low level. So that means that at some point you can use this windowing API without SAML at all. All right, so let me go back to my code in here. So I will say that, hey, I'm commenting that I want to use the new low-level APIs. Let me just run that, and everything should be working. Yep, as you see, everything's working. Now I have a new custom title bar. The difference is SAML has some kind of a style property that you can apply, and this is the reason why you see this purple color before. And with this API, I'm not applying any kind of style, but you can also do it as well. So as I say, you have two sets of API for handle the windowing, one at the SAML level, another to the low level in the app window class. Another thing I want to highlight is we try to remove this packaging project from here and create just a unified, simple, single project to package and unpackage your apps. You know, and we announced we are working on package, but the packaging is still working. We try to introduce this packaging, this single project in the experimental, but we're running out of time. So the thing that we did is just public in a separate standalone v6, so you can start to use as soon as possible while we are integrating into the v6 of the project reunion. So the thing that you have to do is just go into the extension, manage extensions, and install something like the single project MSIS packaging tools. There are some instructions that you have to follow up, and the good news is we already create the document and make the document public, so you can follow up these small steps. Oh, this is not the right one. I show something different. Okay. Let me just click in the right link, this one. Package your app using single project MSIX. So follow up this instruction, and you can just use just one single project for package your application. It's very straightforward. The only thing that you have to do is just apply these couple of properties in here. What is there? What is there? This couple of property in your project system, copy and paste. And once you are doing that in your project system, the thing that you need to do is just move some package app manifest to this folder, image to this folder, reload the project, build again, and everything should be working. I'm not doing that because we are running out of time, but believe me, it is super simple. Another thing I want to announce, or maybe I remember that, is that we update several demos that we have in this repository in the WinUI 3 demos. So right now you can find here like 3 demos, one for the build that the using build in 2020 with for C Sharp and C++. We have another one for Contoso Airline, more enterprising using MVVM pattern. And we have another one for more visual for sorting element using C Sharp as well. All these samples are up to date. Some of them are using the stable release 0.8, but as you see, it's very straightforward just to move to the 1.0 experimental. Another one is using directly the experimental. And I believe this is all I want to show you today. So Anna, or yours again.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Miguel. Let's put this back to the PowerPoint here, and I am going to share my PowerPoint with the team again. Okay. All right, we're good to go. I'm going to try switching my mic here really quick, actually, just on the fly. Nope, that mic didn't work. I'm going to stick with this. Okay, moving on. Our next section here is welcoming our special guest, the input and composition team. So we have 3 members of the team here today on the call who are going to go over a bit about what they do, what areas they cover, and then they are here for Q&A to answer all of your burning questions about input and composition. So we have Kevin, who is a PM focused on supporting input and composition within WinUI. We have Faye, who's the engineering manager for spatial input. And then we also have Chris, who is the engineering manager for composition and rendering. So I'm going to go ahead and just show these slides, and they're going to speak over them. But then as soon as we get to Q&A, you'll be able to put a face to the name and interact with them directly. So let me get my point here. Okay, Kevin, you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thanks, Anna. Yeah, so we're the platform team that specializes in input composition as well as the windowing and messaging. And we are the layer that the XAML framework is built on top of. So if you've looked through the documentation, you may have seen this diagram down below, which still accurately details out where in the stack we lie. The biggest modification today is that XAML and some of our layer are now running in-app rather than on the OS, and that our namespace will have changed to Microsoft dot whatever instead of Windows dot whatever. However, our layer is still built on top of the DirectX layer, which is still system. With that, I'll now hand it off to Chris, who will have much more interesting things to say about the output side.
Thanks, Kevin. Yeah, my name is Chris Raubacher. I'm engineering manager for the rendering tech. That is what you get when you use WinComp and now lifted WinComp. Our API uses the visual tree. We define a visual tree that XAML sets up and defines how they want content to be rendered. And so we are the underlying rendering system that XAML uses. As Kevin said, a lot of work that we've been doing recently has been lifting WinComp to be able to provide rendering functionality within the app process. We still call out to D3D. We're still using the GPU to accelerate rendering, and we provide a lot of effects that XAML and others are able to use. Some examples of the types of things that my team has been working on are rounded elements that you may have seen in Windows 11. We did a lot of work to make that really fast. We also own the effects system. So this includes acrylic and fluent lighting, as well as Lottie and the animated shapes that you see on the OS. And now I'll hand off to Faye, who will talk about the input system.
Hi, my name is Fei. I'm the engineering manager for spatial inputs. My team owns basically this any input that requires heat test to be delivered. Some common examples include mouse. So anytime you mouse you use your mouse over to something, or you use a mouse scroll wheel, and we figure out where to deliver the input to through heat testing, and we send message to the application to allow them to change cursor, for example. So that's on the mouse side. My team also owns a touch, and for touch we send pointer input and also give the developer gesture recognizer so that they can feed the input into gesture recognizer and get all the gestures back and do all the panning, zooming through touch gestures. And another common input type is a pen, and we just same as the touch, we deliver the input to the raw input and pointer input to application. At the same time, we also have special features for pen. For example, your pen, the inking scenarios require really like high accuracy. At the same time, also we need to provide really good lower latency. So background input is one feature that we added specifically for inking scenarios, so that application can get a really good latency. The ink is actually following your pen. So those are some of the common spatial input types. There are other types that we also own, including gaze, for example, or dial. Those are less common, and we're going to add more support for those types later on. In terms of namespace, the Microsoft.UI.input is namespace that contains all the input APIs. Currently is marked as experimental. It will become official in the upcoming releases. And most of these APIs are accessible through XAML. So most time you don't program against these APIs directly. You get pointer input through XAML with a few exceptions. For example, your gesture recognizer, you use gesture recognizer directly. You feed the input you get from XAML into gesture recognizer. But for the most part, you access the API through XAML. Underneath XAML, we are following what Chris just said on the composition side. We're moving input delivery more of that logic into app process. So that's something that we're keep doing. So that's just brief description of the spatial input space. Now I think back to you, Kevin.
Oh, I don't actually have anything else to present. I was just going to pass it back to Anna.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Yeah.
Then back to Anna.
Thank you. Perfect. Let me put my webcam back on here. Thank you so much to all these folks from the IXP team who joined us. I think that it's really cool to kind of see this different side of the team, input and composition. And once again, they are here to answer your questions. So if you have questions about anything that they just said, please just drop them in the chat, and we're here to answer. And so that's a great segue into what is next, which is Q&A. So if everybody on the team wants to go ahead and turn on their video, I will put us in together mode and we can get started. Savoy, are you ready?
Yes. Yeah, is my mic coming through all right?
Yes, it is. Okay, let me share this Q&A. Okay, we're good to go.
Awesome. Just had something stuck in my throat there for a moment. Let's see. I would love to start with a question for some of our guests. I think I see Kevin has his mic on. All right. Kevin, can I use IXP today, and when would I want to use it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the IXP layer, which represents our platform, has been around for quite some time. It's been on the system, so you can use the system composition and input APIs for like many releases of Windows. The lifted APIs currently are available in the WinApp SDK. And in terms of when you would want to use it, I think this is mainly if you want to take advantage of some of the low-level functionality. that aren't present in the XAML layer. So you won't have the framework conveniences that XAML provides, but you'll be able to, take advantage of like extra features such as adding in your own fancy animations on top of like the XAML controls, having more fine-grained input control for pen, or potentially, like creating different effects and sorts. So that's when you would want to use the APIs.
Awesome. All right. Well, I see I have a few popular questions for Ryan and Mike here. I'll start with the one that's for both of you. When will the 1.0 preview of WinUI 3 be released? Specifically asking about when we can expect to see the new styles in WinUI 3. And that comes from Ghost1372.
I can start, Mike.
Okay.
So we have a 1.0 experimental out now. It doesn't contain those new styles, though. This week, we are beginning to port over some of the more recent changes of the WinUI 2 stack to WinUI 3. So I suspect that you're going to start to see a lot of new stuff show up that is currently in WinUI 2 starting to show up in WinUI 3, probably at the next experimental release. We're also trying to negotiate a complex schedule where, as we approach shipping 1.0 with WinUI 3, we at some point have to stop churning the code and we have to stop making changes. And so we're trying to get as many of those changes ported over. We may not get all of them ported over before 1.0. Some of them may have to go to 1.1, but we think we'll probably get the lion's share of them. So you'll start to see all of this moving pretty quickly since Q4 is rapidly approaching. Mike, I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add to that.
I was just going to add a little backstory. I'm not sure if everybody understands, but there's a split between the WinUI 2 code that's in GitHub, and then the XAML code below it. It started out in the Windows OS, and then we pulled it out separated out of Windows, and so it's got now all of XAML, what used to be the Windows XAML and the WinUI 2 XAML, all as part of WinUI 3. And so the WinUI 2 XAML is code that we have to move back and forth. We've got two different code bases, we have to move it back and forth, and we just don't have it all automated yet. And so it takes a little time to move it. And so that's why there's a little bit of a lag.
Awesome. All right. So a question for our other guest, Scott, here. WinUI currently have two critical bugs for me. The first is related to the XAML parse exception, which have many reasons why it is thrown. And the second is CS WinRT related to null reference exception in property changed. These two bugs for me are the only reason why our app couldn't be released. Is this something that your team is planning to solve in the near future? And that is coming from Jan Rajnoha.
Yes. Hi, Jan. The answer is that, at least for the second part of the question, the property change null reference exception, that has been fixed in CS WinRT version 1.3.3, which is finding its way into the Windows App SDK 0.8.2, which we hope to ship at the end of this week. So part of the challenge here is code velocity. Some of these fixes have been made in the last couple of months, and it just takes a while for them to find their way into your hands. It depends on the nature of the CS WinRT bug. If it's something that we can fix in the runtime, which is WinRT runtime DLL, then you can add an explicit framework reference to pick that up immediately as soon as we publish. If, on the other hand, if it affects generated projection sources, then it needs to be carried through the Windows App SDK pipeline. And that just takes longer, unfortunately. But the good news is that fix will be available shortly. The other issue that you mentioned, the first one, the XAML parse exception. Yeah, we're aware that the debugging experience for XAML parse exceptions needs some improvement. Could use some improvement. Oftentimes, what you'll see is just an opaque exception that pops all the way up to your application's started event. And that's not actionable, it's not helpful. So we're looking at ways to improve that. I don't have any timelines on that, but we're aware of that, and hopefully we can improve that for you.
By the way, the version of WinApp SDK 0.8.2 that has a fix for that property change null ref, that's out already. That's available already.
Great.
All right, that was awesome, Scott. Thank you so much for the response there. Ryan, another popular question for you coming from RoBlue. Are additional controls still going to be open sourced and added here to the WinUI 2 library? For example, grid source code, command bar source code, etc. Or are all controls not already in WinUI 2 going to remain in WinUI 3 only indefinitely?
Can you read the last part again? I wanted to make sure there was a couple double negatives in there.
No problem. I'll also post it here in the chat so that you can see it.
Sure.
The question was, are all controls that are not already in WinUI 2 going to remain in WinUI 3 only indefinitely?
No, I don't. We have no policy like that. Generally speaking, right now I would say we're in a phase where we're trying to co-develop both WinUI 2 and WinUI 3 and have rough parity between them. There are differences. We are closing some of those gaps. So, for example, a control that debuted in WinUI 3 is WebView 2, as you all know, and we are bringing that to WinUI 2. So that is one example of going in the reverse direction. Usually, the main sort of flow of this is the a lot of the stuff starts in WinUI 2. A good part of this is just literally how our staff is working right now. A lot of the WinUI 3 developers continue to work on decoupling, lifting the technology out, adding new capabilities that are more like what I would call runtime foundational capabilities, like unpackaged support and things like that. Whereas a lot of the WinUI 2 developers are focused on like building new features and controls and widgets. And so just because that's how the devs are apportioned, a lot of the new controls show up in WinUI 2 first, but we have no policy saying we're not going to bring things forward into WinUI 3 or in the reverse. We're not going to take things in WinUI 3 to 2. We want them to be generally equivalent, probably for the foreseeable future.
Awesome. All right, let's throw one to Mike here. Mike, Terry is asking that there appear to be tree view behavior changes from WinUI 3 0.5 and 0.8 related to node selection. Is this something that you can comment on?
Don't know details. I was just looking, I didn't see this posted on the discussion on the repo either. I mentioned a minute ago that there's code flow between the WinUI 2 versions of things and code and the WinUI 3 code. It's possible that between 05 and 0.8, we took an update to the tree view code and there was a behavior change in there. But if you could stick it on the repo.
Awesome. All right,
or
and while
ping,
I've got...
ping if it's already there, because I couldn't find it.
Sounds great. And Mike, while I have you, and maybe this is a question for Scott too, Dot Morton asked, is there something that can be done about hiding the ABI namespaces? Resolving namespaces always default to this, and we never need to use it.
Yes, good news for you, Dot Morton. That's been fixed. That should be available today in VS 17, Visual Studio 17, Preview 3 or later. So yeah, that was a fix that required Visual Studio to come to the rescue. We were making use of a feature called Editor Browsable, which suppresses the display of certain artifacts, certain namespaces and classes in autocomplete in the editor experience. And that had regressed some years ago in Visual Studio, but now it's been repaired, and so those should disappear.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. All right, let's look back to Ryan for a moment. Ryan, I know we've answered it before, but I'm seeing this question a lot, so I just wanted to throw it your way. Do we have any news on the open sourcing of WinUI and when we expect to have that?
Yeah, I would say that we're probably going to get to open source when we're done getting to things that we consider to be basically P1, priority 1, or critical. And we're still in that priority 1 critical section. And I think we probably will be for a while yet. The way to think about it is open sourcing really will take a pretty substantial amount of our resources. We've already actually spent quite a bit of time sort of in pre-work for open source. To say the pre-work is a lot of the pre-work is basically done, but there's still quite a bit of investment to go to get open source, and it weighs against resources for things like XAML islands, for things like getting to unpackaged support and in-app deployment, so that you can go and deploy with the bits straight out of the box. or straight out of your installation package. And so, like, those are pretty fundamental capabilities that we think really need to be in place before we can start taking a look at the open source and investing in open source. So I think it's probably going to be, I would say, probably a while. Like, I would say probably deep into 2022 before we can seriously look at it, just because we have higher priority things that have to be done. Awesome.
All right, a question for Anna real quick. Anna, Pranesh is asking, when will Windows App SDK VSIX support VS 2022 preview?
Sure, yeah. So in the latest 1.0 experimental release, the VSIX that was shipped, the Windows App SDK preview VSIX, or experimental VSIX now, you can use that in Visual Studio 22. So, yep, you can use the VSIX, you can build your apps, and have fun with all the new VS 22 stuff.
Awesome. All right, and I've got another question for Scott here, and maybe Mike. Can you speak about CS WinRT again? It seems responsible for a large number of really critical bugs. The team seems it seems that the future of WinUI depends on getting CS WinRT right. Is the feeling of the team that the backlog of major bugs is decreasing? So I think this person, Marvin, is looking for a bit of just a status update on the CS WinRT story.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Marvin. We do have a small team, that is true, but I think we are making good headway against the really critical bugs. I think the backlog's around 100 issues now, which seems like a lot, but some of those are very cosmetic enhancements and so on. As I mentioned earlier, CS WinRT 1.3.3 contains a number of fixes, especially for memory-related issues, null reference exceptions, object-disposed exceptions, some of which needed to be coordinated with fixes to the .NET runtime. So, and all of which is now in your hands with WinApp SDK 0.8.2. So it's been a little bit of a wait for some of those critical fixes, but I would reevaluate, and certainly if there's anything that is still outstanding, that's a critical issue for you, please enter it on the CS WinRT GitHub issues tab, and we'll take a look at it.
Awesome. All right, question for Ryan. KHDC is asking, will you be sticking with the name WinUI moving forward, or is there a potential name change since you are part of the Windows App SDK? The reason why I ask is that I'm preparing to build my company's internal UX toolkit and would hate to have my repo and namespaces have the WinUI name in them if it's going to change in the near future.
That's a great question, because we've had some internal discussion about this. I would say the term WinUI I don't think is going anywhere. It's I think it's become a fairly strong brand. We refer to WinUI 2 and WinUI 3, and it's pretty clear. And I would also say that the term WinUI 3 is really, we need some term to sort of distinguish between the UWP XAML stack and WinUI 2 and WinUI 3. So those things aren't going anywhere. We're going to call the thing that we're working on WinUI 3 specifically inside Project Reunion, and I don't see any likelihood of changing that. A lot of the debate that we've had, that I would say we haven't necessarily concluded on yet, is do we separately version WinUI 3 within the Windows App SDK? So the Windows App SDK obviously has an advancing version number, a 1.1, and then we'll do something after that, maybe a 1.2 and a 1.3, and one day we'll have a 2.0 of the Windows App SDK. Do we also version number WinUI 3, the sort of a sub-product inside the Windows App SDK, and do we go with like 3.0 and 3.1 and 3.2? And I think there's more debate on that. But in terms of like just for your situation where you're wondering, hey, is the WinUI 3 name even going to be a thing? Yeah, it'll be a thing. We're going to be calling it WinUI 3 probably for a long time.
All right. Let's see, I have a question for Miguel here. Miguel, Nanda is asking, are unpackaged apps still in plan for 1.0?
Of course. Yeah, we say a lot of time, and yes, unpackaged is still on the plan. Just remember, you can query the roadmap in our site in WinUI 3 GitHub. So you can see there the details. For unpackaged, we are making steady progress. Right now, we have people working on that actively. Yeah, we are expecting to have, even in the last preview, if we have time, to see the unpackaged support.
Awesome. All right, and Fernanda as well. I'm not sure if YouTube's going to let me post this link or not, since never quite sure what's allowed here. But for your question on documentation link for the lifted comp API, we have a link here that I just posted into chat for you. And while I'm sharing links, I can go ahead and answer a question that actually is in my space here. Symbia is asking, when can we expect new features for WPF? Just to name a few: folder dialog, trimming support, etc. So for those, I'm going to direct you to the WPF repo, where I would highly encourage you to file issues and help the team understand what's a priority for you, so that the WPF team can hopefully work with you to see some of these features added in. Otherwise, unfortunately, we are the WinUI team and are focused on the WinUI side of the platform. All right, so to keep it moving here, Ryan, I've got a lot of questions for you here. Let's start here. Luke Spacewalker is asking, when will Mica material be available in WinUI 3.0?
Big fan of the Luke Spacewalker name, by the way.
Got a chuckle out of me too.
It's legit. Micah, yeah. And Chris, you can jump in and help me out too here if you want to. But basically, the answer is yes. We're aiming to have Micah available in 1.0. That comes in Q4 later this year. Chris and I were talking about it earlier, and he mentioned to me that WinUI 3, just because of how the compositor is decoupled from the operating system and how it works in the Windows App SDK, it's going to be a little bit more particular about where you put the material in your XAML tree. So there are going to be like more restrictions there, and that's just due to literally how the architecture underneath works. But we'll have Micah. You'll be able to go and use it. That's the plan. Chris, if you want to add anything on top of that, feel free. But I think that's basically it.
Yeah. What I was going to add was you essentially have to have Micah in the back of your XAML scene. So all your XAML elements have to be on top of it. So you just have to make sure that you don't clobber over it and render over it. You make sure that you render with transparency so that it's still visible. But absolutely, it's in the plan to come in 1.0, Reunion 1.0.
Awesome. All right, I guess I'll just continue to bombard Ryan with some questions here while I wait for more to show up in chat for other team members. Folks watching, please feel free to throw questions in for our IXP team or Miguel and his awesome demo earlier. Would love to see them get your questions answered. But until then, Ryan, will WinUI include chart controls in the near or distant future? And this is coming from JPT Games and Apps.
Probably not. I would say the answer is no. And the reason I say that is because I've worked in the UI space for many years now and on many different frameworks at Microsoft. And generally speaking, we don't really get involved in charting controls. We trust and rely on the ecosystem around us to go and create those. And so obviously there are charting controls in a variety of what we would call third-party vendors. They produce very professional products, and charting controls are complicated. They almost require a business of their own to really do them right. And it's not an area that we usually delve into. We have no plans to delve into that here.
Awesome. All right, some more questions for Ryan here. It would be great to have App Center support for WinUI. Can we expect that in the future? And that's from Christian.
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that. It's not something that we have focused on much. Maybe we should more. I think it would be useful to have something on a repository to start discussion around that. But it hasn't been something that's been like at the forefront of my mind. So maybe it's something we should chat about.
All right, and another one here that I just lost. Oh, here it is. I think. I'd love to see the team address the printing SDK. For me, printing in UWP seems kind of basic. And then I'd like to combine that with a question I saw earlier. Will the WinUI, will WinUI or Project Reunion get a printing subsystem? And that's from Stefan. I think those are kind of related questions. If they're not, my apologies.
Yeah, great question. I think your characterization of printing being pretty basic in UWP is accurate. It was never really much of a deep focus for UWP XAML in general. I would say that, you know, that's probably in the same category as the last one. We haven't thought a lot about printing, and we haven't been prioritizing it highly. I do think that as WinUI expands, as WinUI 3 specifically expands to sort of meet the needs and be a modern version of what WPF and MFC and even WinForms apps could do, I think that there's definitely more need for us to go and address printing, but it's probably something that's a ways off, just because a lot of our I would say, like earlier I mentioned, you know, we have all these sort of fundamentals we need to do and new controls that we know we need to go and create. Then we've got to go and get open source, and I would say printing probably is a thing that would come even after that. But if that's not the right way to prioritize, like, we're listening. So I'd love to hear it. I don't get a printing question very often.
All right. Still on a roll of questions for Ryan. Would love to give you a break, but I don't see many coming through at the moment.
No worries. Just clean out the tubes.
What factors went into the decision to deviate from the planned stable releases roughly every 3 months to now having 5 months between 0.8 and 1.0? With the Windows 11 design refresh and the increasing amount of developer interest, it seems like a suboptimal time to hold features for a big 1.0 release. To me, it seems like a 0.9 release in September would be preferable, and that's coming from Marvin.
There's a bunch of factors there. I'll try and hit them quickly. First of all, I think it's worthwhile sort of delineating between what I would call the pre 1.0 days and the post 1.0 days. So, you know, pre 1.0, we've gone everything from shipping previews. I think preview 3 and 4 were separated by what, a month or two or something. It was a very small amount of time. There's been periods where we've been shipping roughly every 3 to 4 months, and there's been periods that have gone even longer, like between 0.8 and 1.0. So we haven't been consistent in that respect. But a lot of it is just like determined by the pace that the team moves at. Once we get to 1.0 and beyond, that cadence is probably going to become a little bit more rhythmic, and we're having discussions internally about how rhythmic that should be. And of course, because we ship as part of the Windows App SDK, in some sense, it's not really the WinUI 3 team deciding when that rhythm is. It's now sort of being decided together collectively by all the technologies in the Windows App SDK. So there will be a rhythm that's established, and whether or not it's every 3 to 4 months, that might be a little bit quick. I think the feeling is maybe that's too quick now, but we'll get into that rhythm post Q4 of this year.
Awesome. I have a question for Mike that just came through. Deadpool Sway is asking, when WinUI 3 goes open source, will there be a good architecture doc?
Can't say specifically, but I can say a little bit about documentation. We're definitely within the team. We're doing an effort to create more documentation around what we're doing, including things that we did a while ago. There's code in WinUI 3 that has been around for a really long time. You can sort of see some of the migrations of the C++ language looking through the code sometimes. So we've also been making an effort to go back and retroactively document some things. So I would say we're running a marathon with documentation. It's not something that you can get done in a couple of weeks, but we just over the last year or so, we've been making more of an effort, both internally and externally. So can't say for sure specifically about an architecture doc with open source, but hopefully.
Awesome. All right, a few questions for Gabby here. Gabby, Deadpool Sway is asking, for WebView 2 preview in WinUI 2.7, is it a committed feature or experimental? And on that note, Tudor is asking, do you have open source projects for WebView 2 in WinUI 2?
Yeah, super great questions. So for WebView 2, we are committed to shipping it in preview, as it will be available in PC only. We're not yet ready, and we don't yet have plans to ship in a WinUI 2.x stable release. And then for the question about open source projects, right now WebView 2 is in WinUI 2 and currently in PR. So once it merges and shipped in the next WinUI 2.7 pre-release, it'll be available open source in that repo.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. All right. Let's see what we've got here. Ryan, I saw this come through again here. Robert is asking, will WinUI have support for the Rust programming language?
We've heard a lot of requests for Rust. I'm trying to remember if we actually put this on our public roadmap as something that we wanted to call out. I don't think we quite put it there, but it's definitely something that we're keeping an eye on. And WinUI 3 is sort of the only part of the Windows App SDK that doesn't support Rust, so that also makes it something that we might want to go and focus on at some point. I think the answer will probably be yes, but I don't know when.
Awesome. All right, and I see that Scott volunteered to answer this one from Saint Forever, who asked, when is support for writing UI in C# coming?
Well, yeah, and it depends on what the question is trying to ask. I'm not entirely clear. If it's asking about writing UI classes in C#, authoring UI classes in C# for XAML, there is support for that. It first rolled out with CS-WinRT in, I think, February. That was an experimental release, but now it's solid. Teams are using it internally, so I suggest, if you're interested in that, if that's the meaning of the question, then head on over to the CS-WinRT repo. I'll drop the link in the chat so folks can do that and look at the authoring documentation.
Just to add, sometimes this question is about, this topic is about something along the lines of Xamarin Forms C# markup, I think it's called. That is something that we've looked at and done some prototyping with, but it's not something that we're actively working on right now.
Awesome. All right, and another question for Scott coming from Christian. When can we expect a fix with the incompatibility of the identity client package?
Yeah, that looks to be a problem with the XAML compiler that was closed for a while and then reopened because other folks are running across it. There's a workaround available, which is to explicitly downgrade your Microsoft Identity Client NuGet package reference, which isn't a great permanent fix, but at least it's a workaround. So I've reached out to Tommy Klein, who works on the XAML compiler, to see if he has any ideas on that.
Awesome. All right, we're getting close to the hour here, so I'm just going to try and fit in a last few. Ryan or Mike, whoever wants to take this here, Groovy Cool is asking, what are the current requirements for desktop apps to be submitted to the Windows Store?
I can make a comment on that. So it's same process as basically the same process as ZWP apps. There's I think the only difference is that for desktop apps, there's a extra question in there because it has to run at full trust. Full trust is a manifest policy term that's not the same as running elevated, but there's just a permission, full trust permission is required. And so I think there's some extra steps in the submission process to answer some questions around that.
Awesome, and I just shared some docs related to the question in chat as well. All right, so yep, I see a question here for Chris. Chris, is Win2D going to be supported in WinUI 3?
Yeah, so Win2D is a vector library that calls down into D2D, and it existed in WinUI 2 to be able to easily add animated vector graphics. We're continuing to work on bringing more support for WinUI 3. We have a version of Win2D that is built against WinUI 3. We can share that out, or you can find it searching for Win2D, I think, .WinUI 3. It's not part of the WinApp SDK yet. We are evaluating what the best way to layer the controls with WinUI 3 is for the long term, and are planning to bring that solution into WinApp SDK when it's ready.
Awesome. All right, and we're down to the last minute here, so let me turn it over to Ryan, actually, as we close out this Q&A. Before we go, though, I do want to say thank you, of course, to all of the viewers tuning in and asking awesome questions, and thank you to all the team members joining us from WinUI, IXP, and often beyond to come and support our community of developers and help them make the most of WinUI. We're grateful for your time. Yeah, thanks, folks. With that, here's Ryan.
Thanks, Savoy. So just before we finish the call, I just wanted to say, sort of one last time, a big thanks to Anna Wishnoff, who's driven this call for the last year and a half. And I'm super excited to have Gabby coming on. We'll start with her next month. But everyone in the chat, make sure you wish Anna well, because everyone on the team wishes her well. And she's, it's been a journey, a really positive journey in her trying to run this call and figure out the sort of the best way to bring the information to you guys. So thanks very much, Anna. You're awesome.
Oh, thank you so much, Ryan. That's so nice. Yeah, it's been awesome hosting this call. And as Ryan said, as I said, Gabby's going to do a great job. We're really excited to see her take this over as well. So let me put this back on our PowerPoint just to close this out. Thank you all for watching. My last call, it's been so awesome doing this call with all of you. Thank you to everyone on the WinUI team who's been here every month answering questions, working with me, reading all my long emails. You guys are great. And yeah, until next time. Bye, everyone.